New York City, a melting pot of dreams and despair. On May 1st, 2023, the city witnessed an event that shook its soul. It happened on a northbound F train. A young man, his voice echoing through the carriage, yearned for help. His name was Jordan Neely. A familiar face in the city's subway, he was known for his Michael Jackson impersonations. This time, his performance was different. It was a desperate plea for food, for water, for someone to acknowledge his existence. Jordan's cries, fueled by hunger and desperation, unsettled some passengers. The atmosphere grew tense. Then a man confronted Jordan. A struggle ensued. The man, a 24-year-old former Marine, put Jordan in a chokehold. Minutes passed. By the time the doors opened, Jordan was lifeless. The life of a troubled young man, extinguished in a moment of chaos. Jordan Neely's life was a tapestry of talent and turmoil. Born with a captivating smile and a natural rhythm, he dreamed of entertaining the world. He idolized Michael Jackson, his moves captivating anyone who watched. But life had other plans for Jordan. He was dealt a difficult hand, marked by personal tragedies and systemic failures. Growing up, Jordan faced hardship and instability. The loss of his mother at a young age left an indelible scar. He struggled to find his footing, navigating a world that often seemed indifferent to his plight. He grappled with mental health challenges, his cries for help often lost in the cacophony of the city. He became a familiar face on the subway, his Michael Jackson performances a cry for connection. His story, though tragic, is not uncommon. Jordan's life, though tragically cut short, was not lived in anonymity. He was a familiar face in the city's intricate web of subways and streets. People knew him. They saw him. Yet they didn't truly see him. They saw the outward struggles, the desperate pleas for help, the erratic behavior. They didn't see the human being behind the struggles, the pain, the unfulfilled potential. Jordan's story is a stark reminder of the invisible struggles countless individuals face in the city. The homeless, the mentally ill, the marginalized. They walk among us, their stories often untold, their pain often unseen. The subway, that artery of the city, became Jordan's stage and his prison. It was a space where his vulnerability was on full display, where his cries for help echoed, often unanswered. The F train rattled northward, a microcosm of the city itself. Inside, passengers lost in their own worlds, reading, listening to music, staring into space. Jordan Neely, his voice echoing through the carriage, disrupted the unspoken pact of anonymity. His pleas for help, for food and water, were met with a mix of discomfort and indifference. The atmosphere shifted. Tension crackled in the air. Some passengers felt uneasy, their discomfort growing with each repetition of Jordan's pleas. Others saw a man in distress, their empathy battling with the ingrained fear of the unknown. In a space designed for fleeting encounters, Jordan's presence forced a confrontation with the city's underbelly. Then, a man stepped forward. Daniel Penny, a 24-year-old former Marine, confronted Jordan. What started as a verbal altercation escalated into a physical struggle. Panic gripped the carriage. By the time the train screeched to a halt, it was too late. The death of Jordan Neely sent shockwaves through the city. The video, a chilling testament to the incident, ignited a firestorm of emotions. Outrage, grief, anger, fear. The city, already grappling with social anxieties, found itself on the precipice of division. Was it a case of self-defense or a fatal overreaction fueled by fear and prejudice? The city became a battleground of narratives. Protests erupted, demanding justice for Jordan Neely. They saw his death as a symbol of a system that criminalizes poverty and mental illness. Others rallied behind Daniel Penny, the young Marine thrust into an impossible situation. They saw him as a good Samaritan, a citizen trying to protect himself and others. The city, once united in its grief, now struggled to find common ground. The tragedy laid bare the city's deep divisions, exposing the fault lines of race, class, and social responsibility. The legal battle that ensued mirrored the city's own internal conflict. Daniel Penny, initially questioned and released, was later indicted by a grand jury on charges of manslaughter. The case hinged on a single agonizing question: was Jordan Neely's death a justifiable act of self-defense or a tragic consequence of excessive force? The prosecution argued that Penny, by placing Neely in a prolonged chokehold, had used deadly force disproportionate to the threat. They presented witnesses who claimed Neely, though distressed, had not physically assaulted anyone. The defense countered with a narrative of self-defense, arguing that Penny, a trained Marine, had acted instinctively to protect himself and others from a perceived threat. They highlighted Neely's history of mental illness and erratic behavior, suggesting that Penny had reasonable grounds to fear for his safety. The case became a battle of narratives, each side presenting its version of the truth. The jury's verdict, when it finally came, was far from unanimous. Daniel Penny was found guilty of second-degree manslaughter. The city, still grappling with the aftermath of the tragedy, was left to ponder the complexities of justice and the fine line between self-defense and excessive force. The subway tragedy mirrored the city's soul, forcing New Yorkers to confront their roles in a society grappling with complex issues. It demanded accountability from individuals and systems, sparking dialogue about mental health, homelessness, and systemic inequalities. The tragedy became a rallying cry for increased mental health funding and a more compassionate approach. It also ignited conversations about race and implicit bias, urging New Yorkers to confront their own prejudices. Jordan Neely's death, though tragic, presented an opportunity for the city to commit to doing better. The Jordan Neely case, while deeply personal, transcended the individual tragedy. It became a flashpoint, illuminating the systemic failures that plague cities across America. It underscored the urgent need for comprehensive reform, not just in law enforcement, but in the very fabric of society's approach to mental health, homelessness, and social justice. The overrepresentation of individuals with mental illness in the criminal justice system is a national crisis. The lack of adequate mental health resources often leads to individuals ending up on the streets or entangled in the legal system, perpetuating a cycle of hardship and incarceration. The case of Jordan Neely highlighted the dire need for increased funding for mental health services, accessible and affordable treatment options, and a shift from punitive measures to a more compassionate and therapeutic approach. Furthermore, the incident exposed the inadequacy of existing systems in addressing homelessness. Shelters, often overcrowded and under-resourced, fail to provide the support and stability that individuals need to rebuild their lives. The tragedy underscored the need for a multi-pronged approach to homelessness, encompassing affordable housing, job training, and comprehensive support services that address the root causes of this complex issue. The Jordan Neely case, though heartbreaking, presented an opportunity for systemic change. The aftermath of the Jordan Neely tragedy revealed a city fractured. Lines were drawn, fueled by fear, anger, and deeply ingrained biases. The chasm between those who saw a man unjustly killed and those who believed the act was justified highlighted the urgent need for empathy and understanding. Bridging this divide requires a conscious effort to listen to and acknowledge the pain of those who grieve Jordan's death. It means recognizing the systemic injustices that contributed to his tragic end and working towards dismantling them. It necessitates acknowledging the fear and uncertainty that many feel about mental illness and homelessness, while challenging the prejudices that often accompany these issues. Empathy also requires understanding the perspective of those who saw Daniel Penny as a good Samaritan, caught in a difficult situation. It's about acknowledging the complexities of the situation, the fear and adrenaline that can cloud judgment in moments of perceived threat. The path forward requires open dialogue, a willingness to engage with different perspectives, and a commitment to finding common ground. Only through empathy and understanding can the city begin to heal the wounds of this tragedy and build a more just and compassionate future. The death of Jordan Neely, though a stark reminder of the city's struggles, also ignited a flicker of hope. It sparked a conversation, uncomfortable but necessary, about mental health, homelessness, and social justice. It mobilized communities, prompting calls for reform and a renewed commitment to protecting the most vulnerable. The tragedy underscored the need for a multi-pronged approach, one that addresses both the immediate needs and the systemic roots of these complex issues. It highlighted the importance of investing in mental health services, providing affordable housing and support for the homeless, and dismantling the systemic biases that perpetuate inequality. The city, in its grief and outrage, found its voice, It demanded accountability, not just from individuals, but from the systems meant to protect and serve. It called for a shift in perspective from fear and indifference to empathy and understanding. The road ahead is long, fraught with challenges and setbacks. Yet, amidst the grief and anger, there's a glimmer of hope.